what are some of the errors you found in these supposed people who are living past 105?
The Japanese government found out that most of the people in Japan who were over age 100 were dead. They were long dead.
Right, because they died in 1944.
Exactly. The real secret to longevity, right? That's over 230,000 people dead in reality and alive on paper. And this is data that the Blue Zone's demographers had just said was the best in the world. This is now a law on the books. You can now give a person an experimental treatment of any dose for any reason, as long as you say it's to extend longevity. And if they die, you are not liable.
It's a little alarming. Welcome to 2%. I'm your host, Michael Easter. So there is a lot of focus on longevity right now. Everybody wants to live longer. And if you are at all interested in longevity, you have probably heard of the Blue Zones. These are places on Earth where people live well past 100 years of age. There are Netflix series about the Blue Zones. There are books about the Blue Zones. And these things all tell us exactly what we can do to live like people in the Blue Zones and, in theory, reach past age 100. But there's a little problem. Well, a very big problem. And that's that the Blue Zones might be one of the longest cons in history. That is what my guest today concluded after he dove deeply into the data and found a lot of critical errors. I'm talking to Saul Justin Newman. He studies population aging at Oxford, and he is also a researcher at University College London, and he's got a new book. It's called Morbid, Debunking Modern Longevity Science. So he's going to talk to us about what he found about the Blue Zones and what it can tell us about the new science of longevity. Saul Justin Newman, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, here's where I want to start with something very basic. What are the Blue Zones?
Blue Zones were supposed to be regions of the world where people attained remarkable ages at remarkable rates. And usually the remarkable age is age 100.
And how did they start? How did this idea even begin?
I think the idea is, how it began is a bit of a mystery, because the process was to go to an island of a European country, which is Sardinia, and say, people here may live a very long time. Let's check. Now, why that particular island was chosen is a bit obscure, but the basic idea was someone ran a small study. They decided that this region of a very poor part of Italy was living an extremely long time, and they called it a Blue Zone. Amusingly, they also jumped straight to the conclusion of why people were living a long time in this area. And I love this because it hasn't made it into the lifestyle advice. But the original conclusion was because of all the incest.
Of all the incest.
Yeah. The person who had done this had gone to this island and decided that incest was causing extreme longevity in these little mountain towns.
I did not hear about that when I went to the Blue Zones website. I think I was told to eat sardines or something instead.
Yeah, a little bit by design, I suspect.
So then it expands. So it starts in Sardinia, and then they start tacking on places that are considered Blue Zones. How did that play out?
It played out effectively as a sort of magazine article, not as a scientific process. We had a gentleman arrive from out of the blue, and he picked up this idea of regions where people live forever, and he wrote an article. This is the third most popular article in National Geographic of all time.
Wow.
About these three regions where people supposedly lived past 100. One is in California, in Loma Linda. One is in Okinawa, and the other is this Sardinian Blue Zone. And the idea was that if you do as the Romans do effectively and behave like they do in these three very, very different places, you too could live past age 100. It's a very alluring idea. And it launched a sort of lifestyle chain of products, starting with cookbooks and moving on to absolutely everything under the sun. I think they even have a cologne now.
Nice. And then, so they identify these three places, and then they start adding on places, right? There's like Costa Rica, different places. But the idea is typically they will identify something these people do, these people who are supposedly long living, and therefore that is kind of the key to living longer for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a central claim that people in these places live for very, very long times. And then there's these subsidiary claims that we've figured out why this happens. And there are these 9 sets of behaviors that are why people in these regions live a long time.
Yeah, and what are some of those behaviors?
Absurdly drinking every day, which is a bit of a stretch. I find it astounding that that's item number 1, especially because Loma Linda is a teetotal place. But the others, they fit neatly into preconceived ideas of what we think is healthy. There is sort of gentle exercise is probably the most sensible. And then there are these vaguely defined sort of feel-good sounding concepts like be in the right tribe or connect with your neighbors or hang out with loved ones, stuff that you want to do anyway. And is very easily marketable.
To your point on the marketing, why do you think this idea took off so well? Was it just like a brilliant packaging around basic advice with something sciencey sounding about people living older?
Precisely. And it's not just that, it's a proven market strategy going back to the first emperor of China. I mean, it's not a new sales pitch to say that, I have the secret to living forever and you just follow my advice, pay me my money, and I'll get you there. Now, the beauty of that is, first, if people don't live forever, they can't complain because they're dead. So your customer complaints division has very little to do. But also, it's something that everybody wants to hear, right? Especially now, we know what contributes to longevity. And it's going to see a doctor, it's exercise, don't drink, don't smoke, right? Now, if you don't want to do that, then you are wide open for sales pitches, right? Really wide open. It's really kind of an easy win to even just imagine that there's a pill that will make you live longer. Yeah. Even if it's a placebo, it's an appealing idea. It's sort of, here's my anxiety reduction process for the day.
Yeah, and especially if you like to drink, you see that and you go, I like this Blue Zones idea. They drink. I'm going to drink too. That's great.
Exactly. The pitch to California wine mums, like they specifically say what kind of wine you should try, right? It's go and get Sardinian Cannonau wine. Like, why? Who knows? But this is a very easy sell. And it's also backing up off a sales pitch that was around in the 70s that was essentially exactly the same. In the 70s, there was something called longevity zones, pitched in the same magazine, pitched in National Geographic, by a professor of medicine at Harvard called Alexander Leaf. Now, let's just say these haven't exactly held up. One is in the Hunza Valley of Pakistan. We've got one in a place called Vilcabamba in Ecuador, and we've got another in Soviet Abkhazia, in Georgia. Now, these aren't centers of longevity. And the short answer to why these places looked on paper like people living past 100 was that they were just committing pension fraud, or they had just simply no idea how old they were.
Yeah, let's get into that. So how did you start to become skeptical of this idea? Tell us that whole story of how it unfolded and how you ended up writing about this.
I began just with a friend sending me a scientific paper, because I'm a huge nerd. It's unapologetic at this point. And I'd finished a medical science doctorate, and a friend of mine had sent me a paper saying, you're interested in how long people live, here's a paper. The paper was in the top scientific journal in the world, and it involved someone accidentally rounding off most of their data to 0 by accident and then publishing the results. And that's a shocking thing to do. And it got me interested. It's a huge problem. If you used the correct column in the spreadsheet, the whole thing fell apart and you reached the opposite conclusion. But the conclusion was about how long it is possible to live. What is the limit to human life? So it's a really compelling question. How long is it possible for me to live? How long? And the fact that this debate was being undertaken with such terrible evidence was amazing to me. And it became more amazing when the other top scientific journal in the world published a paper stating exactly the opposite conclusion to the first paper. And that was based on something even worse. So what these people had done is they'd taken every 105-year-old or record of a 105-year-old in Italy, And they had fit a model to it, but it was the most biased mathematical model possible. It was the only one that gave them a publishable result. And so here you have two halves of an academic debate. Neither of them are remotely close to following the rules or having any integrity. And it dragged me in against my will into this question of how long is it possible to live? Do this data even make any sense?
How did that get you to blue zones eventually? You start kind of stripping away at this question. You're kind of like a thorn in the side of these researchers, and then what happens?
Yeah, I mean, more than a thorn. It's a massive embarrassment to have to retract something from these papers. And that's exactly what these groups should do. But I was sitting on a bus and came up with a theoretical idea. It's a very non-intuitive theoretical idea, because usually in science you get measurement error. You know, it happens for the Hubble Space Telescope and happens for the particle colliders in Switzerland. You always get measurement error. And usually you can ignore it. You can just say, look, who cares? There's a small amount of random error. It washes out in the statistical model. Well, I found out that mathematically, in a survival process, that's not true. And you get this very non-intuitive result where the number of errors grows exponentially over age. So by the time you reach these advanced ages, you theoretically expect all of them to be trash. It's much easier to be an error in paperwork than someone who has outlived the rest of humanity. Way easier. And this is especially the case because a quarter of the world's children still don't get a birth certificate. So if you go back 100 years when these people were supposedly born, nobody has any paperwork. It gets made up at some point between then and now. And if you make a mistake in that process, you end up being 105. And that's effectively what these old age records are.
Yeah, they're errors in the record keeping. So walk us through, especially with the blue zones, what are some of the errors you found in these supposed people who are living past 105?
Well, the Okinawan one was extraordinary because I didn't find this. The Japanese government found out that most of the people in Japan who were over age 100, I mean, more than 82%, were dead. They were long dead. So most of them had been killed in World War II. And the remarkable thing is, in Japan, you have this sort of self-registration of who has died in your household. Right? And if an American plane puts a bomb through the household, who reports all the deaths? Nobody does.
Right.
And you all keep living on paper. Right. Okay. So there was this amazing finding in Okinawa that if your town had been firebombed, you could predict around 80% of the variation in people reaching 100. So if your town's been firebombed, everyone reaches 100.
Right. Because they died in 1944.
Exactly. The real secret to longevity, right? And the same goes with firebombing cities where all the records are kept. So the Japanese government had gone out to effectively have a celebration of old people in Tokyo, and they'd gone looking for the oldest man in Tokyo. And this bizarre process had played out where city officials come around to the house, they talk to the granddaughter, and the granddaughter says, he's out at Gifu Prefecture. He's gone for the day. And Gifu Prefecture is 400 kilometers away. The guy's 111. So it's a bit of a stretch, right?
105-year-old guy just taking a little jaunt.
Yeah, 111-year-old guy. Apparently he's taking a jaunt. And when they come back, she's like, oh, he's out again. Like as if he's down at the girlfriend's or something. So this keeps happening until they get a bit concerned, and the granddaughter turns up to the police station and says, oh, we've had a terrible thing going on. The granddad has barricaded himself into his room and is fighting off the entire family, which again, for a 111-year-old is quite a feat, right?
Yeah, strong guy.
Strong guy. When the police turn up, he's in the room, and he's been in the room for 30 years dead. No. And they have been collecting the pension the entire time and living in the house. Like their whole extended family. And there's another guy in the backpack at the end of the bed. Now, this is surprisingly normal for 105-year-olds. Like that actually happens all the time.
So people are effectively saying that their relatives who, in this case, died 30 years ago are alive on paper, because that way you can keep cashing grandpa's checks from the government, pension checks.
Exactly. They had cashed out roughly $100,000 in his pension the day that the city officials had come around, right? So there's a
Wow.
big withdrawal. That's normal. But then they go looking for everyone else who is very old, because they discover the oldest woman in Tokyo hasn't been seen since 1986. And they go around all of Japan. Now, they check 92% of cases, and they find that 82% of them are dead. Now, that's over 230,000 people who are dead in reality and alive on paper. And this is data that the Blue Zones demographers had just said was the best in the world.
Yeah. Practically, this plays out for the listener. You hear some advice from Blue Zones that there's so many people over 105 in Japan, and therefore you should eat the food they eat. You should do this thing they do. But it turns out they've all died in the 80s.
They've all died in the 80s, and not only have they all died in the 40s, not only have they all died, but this is supposed to be based on interviews with 260-odd centenarians. Now, those have never been published. And if I had the secret to eternal life and it was in a few interviews, I would publish those interviews.
Yeah.
And this is much more a sort of, oh, trust me, bro, these interviews say what to eat, right? Where's the data? Because the Japanese government is saying 82% of these people at least are dead. And this happens in every blue zone. Right? I looked at the Greek blue zone, right? They had a really similar process play out. They had more than 9,000 centenarians on paper. The global financial crisis comes along, and effectively the Greek government first do a review. They find roughly 200, 300 errors. But the German government comes in and says, we'll not give you a penny until you really check. And it turns out at least 72% of these people are collecting the pension from the graveyard. And after that, the island of Ikaria, which is one of these blue zones, just has no centenarians.
Wow. So this feels like one of those where I think if it were, we looked at these numbers, we think there's a lot of people who are centenarians there. We rolled with the idea, but the fact that then there was a claim around, well, we talked to all of them, but then they never published the interviews, that's where it starts to feel a little more sketchy to me.
It really becomes sketchy when you look at the Loma Linda.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because in the US, you would think we had good record keeping and things like that.
The US is really surprising in this regard, right? We sort of carry with us this idea that if something's written down officially, then it actually is probably true. But let's just ignore that for the moment and just look at Loma Linda on the face of it. Well, the CDC measures Loma Linda for longevity, and it is nowhere near the best place in the US. And at least a quarter of the US, and perhaps 3/4 of the US, has higher longevity than Loma Linda. Now, that's the independent data. So when I took the independent data to the founder of the Blue Zones, I said, where is your evidence that people here live past 100? Now, he has admitted in the New York Times and to Science Magazine that he came up with Loma Linda because his editor asked him to.
Oh, wow.
Find America's Blue Zone, right? He asked him to find America's Blue Zone. The next day, on the drive between his house in LA and Las Vegas, there's a turn at Loma Linda, right? And for 20 years, he has marketed this as if there was the fountain of youth beneath the freeway next to the Costco.
I don't know. Costco's pretty powerful, man. Who knows?
Right near the Jumbo Juice, there's the secret, right? It's astonishing. And then the follow-up claim is that, oh, I forgot to delist it as a blue zone. Now, again, for perspective, this guy has sold part of his business to Adventist Health because there's an Adventist community. On the basis of what? I don't know. What is the basis of this 20 years of relentless marketing? But then there's the meta problem, right? There's a deeper problem here because this isn't a matter of you've got a bunch of people going along with a mail order scheme. I mean, in a sense it is, but you have 100 scientific papers on this place. You have prominent scientists right at the top of the field backing it up. Now, if it's made up, why are they unable to say that it's a fantasy? And, you find this again in Costa Rica. The basis of finding the Costa Rican Blue Zone was Mr. Buettner paid a Costa Rican demographer, and they went out the next day and discovered a Costa Rican Blue Zone. Now, when the UN measured that data, they said that Costa Rica was, quote, near the bottom of the pack in terms of late life survival. So really the question is, why are our supposedly independent scientists not able to detect a 20-year fantasy? You know, this is one of the most popular concepts in this field.
Yeah.
And I have had no answers to this.
Why do you think this has gotten so much coverage even in science circles, like you said?
I think the science circles are just as susceptible to this beautiful idea that things are better in a faraway place, right? Most science is done by white, Western, educated people, whatever that label, that sort of catch-all label you throw on it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, those people are the target of this marketing, and they've bought into it. And they are, now it's turned out to be bunk. They're hugely embarrassed. I mean, there's a sort of a field-wide embarrassment in the demographic community that we have sat around and just sort of believed this. Like, not just the first time. This is multiple times we've bought the same story, and it's turned out to be bunk. So, you know, in one sense, it's just that we are susceptible to this marketing idea that Shangri-La is there and all we have to do is go there and act like it and we'll be fine. It's very alluring, you know, especially because you get to go for a beach holiday to Greece, right? It doesn't work, but we've bought it anyway. What
do you think that says about us?
I think it says we're still in this mindset of Ponce de Leon, right? We want there to be a fountain of youth because it's easier than the tough reality of not just taking care of your health, but I get asked all the time, what's the secret to living a long time? One of the most uncomfortable answers is be born in a rich place that has free healthcare, right? Now, especially in America, that's not a message you really want to hear because you can't do anything about it. I mean, one of the key problems in American health seems to be that you buy fake medicines because you can't afford real medicines. It's just a simple, fundamental problem. It's not, the people who buy this, is not their personal fault, right? There's a systemic problem here where if you have someone who can't afford their cancer meds, they will buy anything. And an industry is developed to feed that. And this is part of that industry. The longevity industry is part of this framing that we can give you a secret pill that's 10 times, it's always 10 times cheaper than the real stuff, right? Unless you're pitching to billionaires. And that has really rotted out the evidence base of medicine here. I mean, it's really shockingly rotting out the evidence base of medicine. We have these laws coming in to the states that effectively throw out the Hippocratic Oath, and they're being pushed by longevity research. You know, the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives is pushing this idea that we can, I mean, this is now a law on the books, you can now give a person an experimental treatment of any dose for any reason, as long as you say it's to extend longevity. And if they die, you are not liable.
Oh, wow. It's a little alarming.
Yeah.
So you do this paper on the blue zones, and you have this new book, Morbid, Debunking Modern Longevity Science, which is an amazing read. And I also have to say, I'm a writer. When I have to open books and read books by scientists, I sometimes go, okay, this is probably going to be a little bit boring, but I'm going to learn something, and I accept that. Dude, you're a really funny writer. And I loved it for that. This is an amazing read. But so the paper comes out, you got the book coming out. What happens when the paper comes out for you personally? Like, how does this field react?
It's incomparable, the feeling of stirring up so many people all at once and having, it's if I've cussed out stamp collectors and every stamp collector on earth is suddenly emailing me, like in all caps, you know, oh my God, how could you possibly, you know, run down the field of philately? And the torrent coming in is mixed with people from other fields laughing their backsides off, basically. Like, I compare it to, I'm a hedgehog that's accidentally wandered into a balloon factory. You know, people are losing their minds trying to get rid of me and not knowing what to do, really. And, you know, I had people emailing my boss. They say, you have to fire this guy. And they're like, why? Is he a bad plant scientist? Like, what's the problem? Some of the peripheral stuff is accidentally hilarious. I opened the book with a discussion of a gentleman from Moscow who has decided the world's oldest woman is a fake, which is, it's fine, wants to dig up the corpse, wants me to help, and has decided to CC the Queen and Vladimir Putin and basically everybody he's ever heard of into this.
Just standard everyday email.
Standard everyday email. And I mean, I have to dig it up because I found out the beauty of this is apparently the Kremlin has to respond. So I've got to find the Kremlin response to, can we please dig up the world's oldest woman's corpse, which has been in the ground for 20 years? Because I want to know what's Vladimir Putin's take on this.
Obviously.
Obvious. Why not reach out? This astonishing sort of Keystone Cops approach to science, it was always deeply funny to me.
Yeah. And then you point it out and everyone gets mad at the same time. The paper is great and you get a ton of notoriety from it. I mean, it gets covered everywhere. Like, it's a big moment because people go, oh yeah, this makes sense. This guy's data is right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of having people in parallel fields who deal with this kind of data all the time, because in epidemiology, there's a joke, every map is a poverty map. You want to look at disease prevalence, every map is a poverty map. But in this case, the poverty map is saying the worse the poverty, the more 105-year-olds. And that simple cognitive dissonance of you want to live to 105, be dirt broke, and live in the worst place possible is funny.
So I think one of the big bear you poked is the sort of blue zone empire. Obviously, I mean, as we've talked about, it's sold to this health corporation for, what was it, like $75 million or something like that?
Some insane amount of money. I mean, they are making huge amounts of money.
Describing you, Dan Buettner, who's the guy who popularized the blue zones, he said the following, quote, Saul Newman is a plant biologist with no academic training or expertise in demography, gerontology, or geriatrics, and has no record of publication in these fields of study. He willfully omits or misunderstands the rigorous age verification and statistical analysis involved in identifying blue zones. What is your response?
I've been a demographer at the University of Oxford for 5 years, right? He's completely made it up. And it's amazing that there's now a scientific paper that says the same thing. That I know of. There appears to be multiple. And the beautiful irony here is, if you're claiming to be very good at understanding people's life history and records, and you can't detect that the guy at the University of Oxford at the Leverhulme Center for Demographic Science is a demographer, like if that is beyond your powers of comprehension, what are you doing? Yeah. Should I trust you? No, not as far as I could kick you.
So let's talk more. I mean, you kind of alluded to this, but what's the harm in this data being wrong? So do you feel like you're just correcting the record, or is there actually harm in all this being wrong?
I mean, there's a temptation to sort of see this as, okay, I'm fighting over pub trivia. And this is the way I initially saw this problem. But there's an extraordinary problem nested in this, because we use this extreme old age data as our model for the future. We have this sort of optimistic model that things are going to get better in the future. So if we want to project what's going to happen, we need to look at the oldest people alive today, because in 60 years, that'll be us. It's a great assumption, right? It's a nice assumption. But when people are setting your pension rates, when people are setting your life insurance, when people are planning long-term for healthcare, these are the numbers they use. And you're talking trillions of dollars of investment. I had a firm with 350 billion euros in investment come and ask me to talk to them. And the reason is that they are using late life mortality models based off this data to say how much you have to pay into your pension, right? Because if I start working now, I'm retiring, in 50 years. And the fact that they've been using this completely, trash data to estimate those rates is very disturbing. I mean, it's extremely disturbing. One of the people I sort of throw a pebble at in this book is responsible for validating more than 50% of the 105-year-olds in the world.
Yeah, and for the average listener, if these pension rates are assuming someone's going to die much older than they probably will, you're going to have to pay more because they're assuming you're going to live longer than you will.
You have to pay way more. Every single day you'll have to pay more, right? And so it is that simple, and it is that shocking that it has a direct effect. The difference between 9 and 10% going to your pension rate is decided by people in London who set the insurance rates that base their decisions off my colleagues at the University of Oxford, and governments who base their data off United Nations estimates of the oldest people alive today. Now, I haven't just published the funny paper. I've got a paper examining every 100-year-old in the world from 1950s until now, measured by the UN. Those data are categorically garbage. They are garbage. I mean, it's really clear. Yeah, I mean, according to the UN estimates, their best estimates, one of the top 10 countries in the world for people reaching age 100 is also one of the bottom 10 in the world for average longevity.
How does that work?
Good question. No one has even asked that question at the UN, right? And it's not alone. In the top 10 is Western Sahara, doesn't have a government. It's one of the 10 best places in the world for people reaching age 100, according to the UN. Malawi, which is, like I said, bottom 10. Kenya, which is bottom 10. Puerto Rico makes it in. Now, Puerto Rico is a very interesting case because they had a very long-running birth certificate system, but I can buy one. It's trivial to buy a Puerto Rican birth certificate. It won't fit, because I don't sound very Puerto Rican, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
But it's around $6,000. And this got so systemically bad that in 2010, Puerto Rico simply decided, look, we're giving up on birth certificates. Yes, we're part of the richest nation on earth. Yes, the NSA is crawling up everybody's backsides through their iPhones, but we give up and we're restarting. Now, that gives you an idea of the systemic problems that have just been glossed over here. Because, when it comes to measuring age, we only have paperwork. That's it.
Do we have any sense of who the actual oldest living human has ever been that we're firm on?
Not the foggiest.
Not the foggiest.
Not the foggiest idea, right? I looked at the world's oldest man, right? The world's oldest man, he has this paper validating everything. Okay, one of his birthdays was, by admission, made up by his family, right? It's problem number one. Number two is the people in the scientific paper write his age down wrong and say he's born in 1987.
1987?
1987. It's not a high level of rigor going on.
Yeah.
And then he gets married to the same woman 3 times, apparently, without being divorced.
Good for him.
Apparently he changes his name, but there's no record of this ever happening.
Renewed vows?
Yeah. So like the name he's born with is different to the name he dies with, but there's no record of that name change. So it's like, I'm born Bob Jones and I'm dying Tim Horton. And it's just astonishingly full of holes, but nobody cares because it's a story about a sweet old man reaching an astonishing age. So no one cares.
I've seen this television show. It's called Mad Men, right? It's like he enters the war as Dick Whitman. Don Draper dies, so he takes his identity, and that explains it all. Yeah.
Well, and it's surprisingly easy to commit pension fraud. I'm not advocating anything here, but one of the few people I have sympathy for in this story is there's a bunch of cheeky old people out there who their mum or dad dies, and they just don't tell anyone. Right? Like the Greeks and Italians are fantastic at this. They're just like, Don't ask any. Don't ask me. He's fine. He's just on holidays in Gifu Prefecture, right? Like it's sort of
Yeah.
There's this fantastic process, and if you just don't tell anybody, it's not like there's a giant machine in the government that goes, there's not a death radar that tells you this guy's dead.
Yeah.
So they just keep sending the pension check every month, and it happens all the time.
So amazing. I mean, I think at an individual level, I can be like, wow, these are some creative people. I kind of admire their wit and cunningness. At a big population level, I go, that's probably not a good thing for that to happen too often.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, at an individual level, these people are kind of lovely. Like Aggie Fenton used to get people to buy her drinks because she'd just go to the local pub and be like, I'm the oldest woman in the world. Give me a heap of beer.
That's awesome. All right. So we talked about some of the money that Blue Zones has generated, $75 million on the deal, and then whatever, all the books and all the, when I was in Costa Rica, there was Blue Zone swag all over the airport. I'll say that. But I feel like the new, much more moneyed version of Blue Zones is sort of happening in Silicon Valley with this techie longevity movement, which you wrote about in the book. What's your take on all of that happening there?
It's very simple. If you're a grifter with creativity, who better to target? Right? Who better? They've bought everything else. There's only one thing left, and that's this illusion that they're going to live forever. So you have these incredibly sophisticated grifts going on. And the best thing is they don't have to be any different than any of the historical grifts. You can just say, I've got the tech-based secret to living forever. You could take something that was sold to Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. You could sell it to these guys and they would believe you. One of the keynote sort of processes I talk about is this idea of transferring young blood into yourself as a way to live forever. Now, That's not a new idea. Dracula is a popular old book. But it's also transparently obvious it doesn't work. And it has not prevented the sales. It hasn't prevented the sales pitches. It hasn't prevented the startup approach of why don't you just slap a couple of liters of children's blood into you? And of course the results are horrific. Where do you get children's blood is one of the things I deal with in the book, and the solution is not great. But I also talk about the fact that blood donors are young, recipients of blood donations are old. It already happens. The logic just is not there. This is one of the most common, if not the most common, medical procedure in the world to give a blood transfusion. It doesn't make you age backwards. But you have this ecosystem of people selling anything they can to billionaires on any basis. And this has fallen into this ecosystem. There are plenty of others. There's plenty of magic pills floating around Silicon Valley, none of which work. But it is creating an extraordinary problem because to be able to do this, you have to throw out the evidence base of medicine. You have to be able to ignore the Hippocratic Oath. And there is now a concerted push to do that. And it's highly effective.
I went to this, this was a sort of work reporting task. I went to a longevity conference in Las Vegas, and tons of people there, super interested in longevity. There's all these booths with all these different supplements and procedures and XYZ. And one of my friends, funny, clever friends, texted me afterwards and he goes, "Did you see anyone that looked over 100 years old?" I go, "No, I did not. I did see a lot of old people at the casino. They were playing slot machines and they looked like they were having a lot more fun. I'll tell you that much."
Yeah. I mean, old people at the casino is probably the right metaphor to go with here. Except the payoff is 0%, right? I make this point, I'm going to make it as well as I can. Now, once you hit age 40, the odds of dying double every 8 years. Just like clockwork. So every 7 or 8 years, your odds of dying double until you're dead. Now, a lot of people get upset about that, understandably, but that's life. there are a heap of people now claiming, especially in that space, that they can reduce biological age. And let's say they claim all the time, I can reduce your biological age by 10 years. Now let's think about what would happen if that was true. Every disease that gets worse with age would drop, right? It wouldn't just drop, it would more than halve. Your risk of dying from a heart disease, more than halved. Risk of dying from cancer, more than halved. You could run a clinical trial on any one of these diseases and be one of the world's richest people because you could do it again and again and again. So if you could reduce my biological age by 10 years, like really actually do it, why are you selling it in a booth in Las Vegas? Right. Why are you not collecting hundreds of billions of dollars from Merck, collecting your Nobel Prizes and going home? Because it's not just the diseases that kill you. Every disease that gets worse with age, balding, erectile dysfunction, whatever it is, whatever insanely profitable thing it is, if you can reduce that by 10 years biologically, you've more than halved the rate. So why are you pitching to me on Twitter? Right? The answer is because none of this stuff works. None of it. It's you're selling a skinny dipping trip to Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth. It's,
Yeah, it's funny because I talked to a few of the people who were running the booths and own these companies, and more than one kind of looked around and said, like 95% of the shit at this conference, it doesn't work at all. But mine works. You go, well,
yeah.
Let me do the math here. How many people told me that? I don't know if that maths.
I had a beautiful study by a lady who went to Sardinia and talked to one of the 100-year-olds, and they said exactly the same thing. They said, my birth certificate is real, but that lady up the road, like, she's making it up.
So for the people listening to this who go, I kind of hate you because I've been eating beans the last 8 years because I was told that it would help me live longer and I hate beans. What do you feel most firm about in terms of things we can do to live longer? And then a sort of underlying question is, with these practices, are we lengthening our lives or are we just not dying as early? How do you think about that?
The point of medicine is to make you live a longer and healthier life. So if you want a longer, healthier life, go talk to your doctor. That's it.
Yeah.
Not some cookbook salesman on YouTube. Go and talk to your doctor. If you can't afford a doctor, if you're in that unfortunate position, then the best thing you can do is exercise, don't drink, don't smoke. Like, I know you want to have a beer after work, but that is the stuff that works. Mm-hmm. You can add some niche stuff, obviously don't do crack cocaine underneath the Loma Linda overpass. But really, we already know what you have to do, and it's very simple, right? It's free.
Yeah.
Except in America for the doctors.
Except in America for the doctors, exactly. How has all this work you've been doing changed your own habits, thinking, and life?
It hasn't changed my habits much. In terms of being a sole custody dad of 2 kids, this is as physically fit as you can be, right? It's it's not, you sort of do the best you can. But in terms of changing my life, it's increased the amount of hate mail, but also it's been extraordinary the degree to which other professional demographers can just be bored. I mean, really just be bored. I mean, we have now a Blue Zones Research Institute, despite the fact that Loma Linda was, on the drive to Vegas, discovered from the freeway. We now have some of the top demographers in the world just saying, I'll take the money and I'll come and join you.
Where's
the intellectual basis of this is highly questionable. It's coming up. It's sort of in development at the moment. But I'm seeing the papers coming through that are trying to reconcile the reputation of this idea without ever explaining why for 20 years an idea with no basis in fact was taken seriously by the scientific community. So, I talked briefly about the demographer from Costa Rica who was paid to find a Blue Zone finds one in Costa Rica, but this is the format. Mr. Buettner has no expertise to speak of whatsoever. and seems to be very successful at simply saying, I'll pay a consultancy to people who do have expertise, and they'll say things that curiously align with exactly what the marketing hype says.
What do you think the fix is?
If I knew, I would do it. If I had an easy answer. But I think the thing we really need to focus on is that medicine was messy. The history of medicine is brutal, and it got us to a point where we have guardrails, we have safety. We cannot just throw that away because people at the top of government or people in a marketing company don't like the burden of evidence anymore. And as a scientific community, I think we need to really kick the charlatans out. Like, it's obvious to everybody who needs to be fired, who needs to be removed. You can't have one of these people has tenure at one of the best universities on earth and has sunk $8 billion of other people's money into what are effectively supplements sold out of Vegas. Now, why is that person still in a job? We need to ask serious questions about, like, why are we putting up with this? Removing, for example, Dr. Oz has won the Pegasus Awards, which is an award for claiming things that will be true when pigs fly. He's won it multiple times, yet the amount of blood it took to get him off one of, I think it was the University of Chicago, I can't remember exactly, it took him to get him off a medical board in a major university is extraordinary. He should have been sacked day one. Day one. And yet we put up with the quackery. I just don't understand why.
Well, I think one thing that is positive is the fact that you and I are having this conversation. Your work is resonating. And I think once you get enough public pushback, people at least start to be a little more on guard, and they start to go, okay, should we, what are the holes here? And it might be a slow process. I don't know. It might be a fast process. Sometimes it's like you have a moment, kind of like when your paper came out and everyone goes, oh shit, we got to get our act together. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the heartening part of this is the public, even when they're being tricked, they sort of have this feeling they're being tricked. They're smarter than we give them credit for, right? At least I agree. I know that the public is very smart at figuring out once they've been shown something as a trick. Like, they know. If you ever doubt this, go to a Reddit subthread on something like a magician's show, right? They figure it out. Even when they're intentionally being tricked, they figure it out. And I think that's sort of wonderful. We just need the equivalent of Penn and Teller up the front saying this is how the trick is done. And the public very quickly latch onto that. So that's a really positive note coming out of this. You ask me for my health advice, but the public know my health advice. Right? They know it themselves already. They know that America, honestly, you need free healthcare. You just need it. It's something that is constantly there in the back of everyone's mind, that there's something sort of deeply wrong with this system. And the more we're very explicit about that, and explicit about the fact that people understand this problem, the more hopeful I am that it will get fixed.
Yeah. How has your work made you think about death?
I'm fine with it. Honestly,
Great answer.
Like, is 80 years not enough? It's great to have 80 years.
It's a good run.
If you go back to the past is terrible. The past is like even if you have 80 years in the past, it's people, especially the right wing, seem to love to harp on about Rome being this sort of tough and manly place where you go around and be tough and fight battles and stuff. Like, you want to know something about Rome? The public bathrooms had a shared sponge. That's the toilet paper, right? So if you're going back, and even if you're at the elite tier of the past, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So, 80 years now is fantastic. It's fantastic. So just enjoy it. Just have a good time, right?
Yeah, your probability of reaching 80 years has never been higher. And
never been higher.
Those 80 years are going to be, in all likelihood, way better than they would have been had you met them 100 years ago, 300 years ago, 2,000 years ago, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so much better. I mean, it again, the history of medicine sort of puts a different spin on this, but you look at what people died of in the past and you look at how long they got and you just think, okay, no, we've lost that perspective and we've lost that feeling of joy in existing to some extent because that constant threat of death is not there. It's great that the constant threat of death is not there, but we don't need to sit around like anxiously panicking that we're not going to make it to 105. Like, it's fine. It's fine to not make it to 105.
That feels like a good note to end on. It is fine not to make it to 105. Well, Saul, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Your book is fantastic. I recommend it to everyone listening right now.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for checking out the episode, and thanks to Saul for jumping on and chatting with us. We are in your feeds twice a week, so please keep an eye out for more. If you have a question for our Ask Michael Anything section, please submit it in the comments or send it to media@twopct.com. Even better, if you want to send us your question as a voice memo or a video, we would love to run that and answer it. We will try and answer as many as we can. Of course, please subscribe to the show. It really helps. And in closing, have fun, don't die. And if you do die, pretend you're alive and keep collecting those Social Security benefits.